very honored to be here. I will have some bad news for you, so be prepared. Governments will never be disruptive. Because the one thing nobody talks about in the Middle East is democracy. It's like a disease that we don't like in the Middle East. So as long as there are no real democratic regimes in the Middle East, you will never have disruption, because it's actually counter to their interest of control. All the governments, or I would say with the exception, actually Lebanon, I mean, with the exception of Lebanon, somehow maybe a little bit in Kuwait, you have some democracy, a kind of democracy, but it's not the real democracy. The rest of the Arab world doesn't have democracy, doesn't like democracy, and doesn't want democracy, because the rulers are conflicted with democracy. They like to control. And therefore, the bad news for entrepreneurs like you is when they decide whether they really want to go to this glorious Middle East, like some of the speakers were saying, that it's a great place to be. Dubai is a great place to be. That's no doubt. Why? Because there, they really like success. They're always trying to improve, coming up with better. When you arrive there, you don't really feel you're in the Middle East, not from the traffic, not from the pollution, not in the airport. Not on the support you get, not with the non-bureaucratic attitude. Everything is online. Leadership there wakes up every day and sees what can we do better, what can we do better for our people. It's it's like an island on an ocean, and the ocean is the Middle East. You know. The other bad news too is that there is another disease there, that bureaucrats and civil servants believe their mission in life is how to stop entrepreneurs like you from succeeding. So instead of thinking, okay, how can I help this young, brilliant guy becomes a success, he thinks like that. I cannot be like him, so I'll rank him down. You know, so he will kind of get him down and not really allow him to succeed. Maybe I'm an extreme, but I come from a country that is really plagued by bureaucracy. And corruption on the lower side, which is really the first base. That's why it's very dangerous for entrepreneurs, because a young guy graduates from Harvard, comes back to Egypt, says, I'm going to do a Chinese restaurant. The horror he has to go through to get the permit for the restaurant, unless he's lucky and he finds the guy who takes bribes, okay? Which is very dangerous, because you can end up in jail with him, you know. So the kind of documentation he needs to submit. I've seen many young people come and leave because just any idea they got stumbled and so on. Now you can argue, well, how did entrepreneurs like you succeed in these countries? Okay, I'll tell you what my dad said. My dad told me that whoever makes it in Egypt can make it anywhere. So, because it's really, as my colleague from Egypt here also described, there is a very bad attitude. The bureaucracy is really killing, and it's really, really tough there to become an entrepreneur and do. So, when people like you have this decision really to make, should I go back or should I stay here? Okay, there is a balance, you know. So, I'm not totally done with the bad news, but I'll shift to some good news. Okay, first of all, most of you from the Middle East here are rare elements. Which means in your country, if you go back to Egypt, you will be a rare element. How many people graduated from the London Business School or had a master's from here and are willing to go back and face this horror? So, so you're a few, and you can actually have an advantage. Why? Because there are not much people like you. So maybe with innovation, some hard persistence, a strong will, double work shift, because half of the work shift would be lost in bureaucracy, you will still make it because your competition is less. Now, if you decide to stay here in the developed world or go to America and so on, the problem is that there's a lot of people like you, because everybody in America mostly has a good education. The country offers the Ivy League universities are 60s or 100s, so everybody is really in, it's not impossible to get a good education, so you'll be competing amongst a lot. The second part is today, again, it has to do with politics. If you look at the Middle East today, and that's also positive, it's a mess. Where is Middle East today? Is it in Iraq or in Syria or in Libya? Or where is the next, or Sudan? Or where is the next point of collapse. I mean, all these countries were countries. They're no countries anymore. So if you were an entrepreneur who wants to go, the first thing you scratch Libya, you scratch Iraq, you scratch Syria. Okay, that's the bad news. But the good news, you need to think also as an entrepreneur. Oh, actually, this could be an opportunity. Why? Because there's absolutely nothing there. These countries have been destroyed to their feet. So you can think, what does a country need? If they need an Uber, okay, then you should be the Uber in Damascus. Okay, I mean, you can laugh because in Damascus now bombs are falling. But you can prepare to be because there is nobody there. You can be the Aramex of there. You can be the new company that will buy drones and get the first permit for drones to be do delivery service. So what I mean is, in itself, it's an opportunity because there is nothing there. Everything has been destroyed. People are not thinking at all what comes next. So if some guys here sit down and say, okay, Libya, Iraq, Syria have been destroyed. They need to be rebuilt. What will happen in 2 or 3 or 4 years? Maybe we should be working on businesses and plans that they will need on the first stage. The good news, there won't be any bureaucracy too because everything is destroyed. So, I mean, you would be greenfield and going into there, you know. But my point is that you cannot discuss business and you cannot encourage entrepreneurs and tell them what to do without really analyzing the geopolitical situation in the Middle East. And if it's not going to bore you, I'm going to give you just 3-4 minutes here because I'm not sure everybody is following, but you need to know what this Middle East right now is going through. So in the Middle East today, you have a new symptom. So all the Arab states have lost control of their destiny. So the people now deciding their destiny sit either in Tehran or in Ankara or in Moscow. And not actually in DC before Donald Trump came because Mr. Obama decided no boots on the floor and I'm not going to do anything. And for 8 years he sends these planes to sightsee in Syria and do nothing and leave ISIS and all these extremists to do what they do. They kill people, they chop heads, they rape and burn, and he's done nothing in the last 8 years. So if Mr. Trump comes now and says we need to clean up there, that's where I actually agree with him, you know, that we can't leave evil people like ISIS say it's not my problem while you are watching a TV when they're burning a Jordanian pilot alive or raping a young American who went to help them or killing 24 Egyptian Copts, slaughtered them, their heads and so on. So you need to understand what's happening in the region now. So while the people who are really running the show now, as I said, Iran, Turkey, and Moscow, they decide what happens in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, and the Arab world is sitting there and not even responding or reacting. So you might not know, but the war in Yemen is not a war between the Yemenis and the Houthis, and no, it's a war between Iran and Saudi Arabia on the grounds of Yemen. Okay? Because again, Iran has decided to fill in the gap because we, the Arabs, have done nothing to unite or to become really sensible and see what needs to be done. So when you decide on your future, you need to know what's happening in that Middle East. Do you want to go and live in a place that you as an Arab, your fate is decided in Moscow or Tehran or Ankara? You need to decide on that. You want to live somewhere where really it's not going to depend just on how brilliant you are, how honest and how hardworking you are, but you will fall into the hands of a civil servant, or you will fall into a victim of this geopolitical situation, which, in my opinion, I don't know how it will end, you know. I mean, it might end or it might not end, but it seems that it's going to happen. It's going to take a long time before it gets resolved. So that should be also an issue for you to think about when you decide, okay, I will go to the wonderful Middle East or not. So, I mean, if you ask me, okay, so what's your advice where? So I say, if I was an entrepreneur today and I need a good environment to start from, I would go to Dubai, or I would go to Beirut, even though Beirut doesn't offer a lot of opportunities because it's a small country and the Lebanese are like sharks. They've got it all. They've got it like all figured out, and I doubt they will leave any of you anything left. It will be left for you. You know? I mean, like they quarrel on every single thing in Beirut. You know, whenever there is a prey or something, you get like thousands of people fighting. Even politics there is mixed with business and so on. But it's a much more nicer city in my opinion. I prefer Beirut than Dubai. If I had to live somewhere, I would choose Dubai, Beirut, because they stayed somehow loyal to their culture, the way they did their architecture, and Beirut is much more, I feel much more happier there. But I wouldn't recommend many places that I've just illustrated now for you to go. The other choice to say as an entrepreneur, okay, why don't I start here, stay here in Europe, and do something here? And that's, frankly speaking, not a very bad idea. Even though you have a lot of other people as bright as you are, and the thing is, we also at Middle Eastern, we have innovation. I mean, we're known. If you live in Cairo, you have to be innovative to drive, because a driver's license will not do it for you. If you don't know, you have to go to the Luna Park, and try to see how you can juggle between human beings and cars who walk together in our streets and so on. So we have innovation, and the good thing here you will find a lot of people who want to help. There is no envious or grudge that you're successful. On the contrary, some countries differ from other countries, I wouldn't go to France, because France, if you're rich, it's a crime. But there are other areas and other countries that really encourage entrepreneurship and have programs and have what you said, they disrupt and believe in disruption. And that's why actually, with all the negativism that tackles Mr. Trump, I believe he's going to be a disruptor, and he wants to be a disruptor, because also in America, there is overregulation. He's right about that. There's overregulation, and there is bureaucracy, and there is also hidden corruption. There is that. So even in America, so imagine. So when you disrupt and you get rid of these bureaucrats that really have no mission in life except to make all our lives hard and difficult, when you talk about regulator, let's say you are in a financial activity and you have the regulator. The regulator thinks he's a policeman. He thinks he's the policeman. He has to go and find a mistake, not see how he doesn't treat me like the client. Like our company is the largest company for years on the Cairo Stock Exchange. And there is no stock exchange without the Orascoms. That's what they say. Okay. And we have to pay a price that every time we are being policed and hampered, and every time we want to do something is being blocked because they think you're too big, you're too successful. So a person like me, I should be retiring soon, I have to go and get myself wheeled up and angry and fight against people who are just angry because I'm successful. At my age, I'm not going to do that. I've done my part in a lot of places. I've worked in Pakistan, I worked in Algeria, I worked in Syria, I worked in Yemen. So I've done my part of going through all this. So now I'm not going to do that anymore. But I don't speak for myself. I speak for younger people who come and they have a dream. And so I actually take it as my mission to help young people. So you have no idea how many young people just send me a tweet or an SMS. I want to sit with you. I want some advice. I do that, even on a one-to-one. I sit with them 20 minutes, half an hour, and tell him advice. And if someone walks into my office, he has a small company, and I don't have a venture capital arrangement, but I like him, I like his idea. Before he goes out, he already has a partner for 50% or 51%, and he gets the money, and he leaves in half an hour, and he does his idea. If I thought the idea was good, of course, because I don't like to fail. And associating my name with a failure, I have enough failures that I've hidden, so no need to add once more, I also have a microfinance company, and I also did it for that reason, because young people, when they start their business, they can't get credit anywhere. If they go to one of these Egyptian banks, not in their dreams, not even if they own the building and they're going to mortgage the building, no. They just they laugh, So we did the microfinance. We give a lot of capital to young entrepreneurs that start. I was also an initiator of Endeavor, like our friend from Beirut. Where is he? Oh, he left. Okay. So to encourage also entrepreneurs and to explain to them what they will be facing. So in summary, you need to know what's happening in the Middle East. You need to compare your chances going there or staying here, the pros and the cons, and decide how to go forward. But if you are like me, who was a nationalist, who loves his country, and he says, okay, but if I don't go to Egypt, and if I don't stay in Egypt, and if I leave Egypt, then who's going to, speak like that? And not many, so I decided I still stay there, Thank you. I'm going to take some questions if you want, or we can all decide to leave earlier. It's up to you.
Hi, here. My name is Nora. I just have a question as it relates to Egypt. You mentioned people based in the UK investing in Egypt.
Can you stand up? Sorry,
Yes,
sorry. I
of
can't
course.
see you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi. And I was wondering if you had a view on capital restrictions, because I think one of the biggest obstacles right now is that you can't repatriate profits from Egypt to abroad, and it's affecting foreign direct investment, it's affecting appetite to invest capital from outside of the country into the country. And the flip side being, once those capital restrictions are lifted, there will be an exodus of an exodus of capital from Egypt to abroad. People will want to move their money to safe havens where they can have access to it. So I just wanted to know your view on when you think that might happen and what the effect will be.
Well, I have some problems answering this question. The first problem is that in my country, sometimes they like gray areas. So they prefer to leave things gray, so they don't really tell you you can or you cannot. It's like the policeman we have, the lights are red, but he tells you you can pass. So you either take his hand or take the light, you know. So as per our central bank governor, he said that before the end of the year, this should be happening, that he's going to make it very easy for everybody to transfer money outside of Egypt. Well, we need to wait and see that happen. But I would share with you, or I would say that today I would be also concerned about sending money into Egypt and investing in Egypt, because right now it's not clear that you really can, and there is a lot of still some restrictions, and they don't make things clear. What people don't understand is investors really need to have clarity, regardless of what this clarity is. So it can be, for example, that if you invest in Egypt $100 million, you're guaranteed at least $100 million out. And then it needs to happen too, not just said, you know. But we don't guarantee profits after that. That's okay, you know. Some people will just say, okay, at least I can get my capital out. But when you don't clarify things, and then also you don't follow with actions, it doesn't happen. So, but I think they will have to do that, because there is no other way. Otherwise, nobody's going to invest. You know, I can tell you that in the last 3-4 years, wherever you read in the newspaper, there's no investments. There's nothing has come, you know. And it will not come as long as it's dubious like that.
Hi. You've done a lot, you've achieved a lot, you've been successful. Have you considered running for president?
That's another problem. First of all, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian Copt, and that is like, okay, it's like impossible. Because if you are Christians or the Copts of Egypt only want to be treated fairly and equally, which they are not. So imagine one becoming a president. It would be nice, you know. But I think I would make a good president for sure. You know. No, I'm a proud Copt, no problem.
Hi, I'm Nurhan from Egypt as well, and my question is about you spoke a lot about the barriers in terms of political barriers, bureaucracy, corruption. What are your thoughts on socioeconomic barriers? It's fair to say everyone here is from a fairly well-off background, we afford an education and so on. What are your thoughts about the other kind of barriers in society for people from a lower socioeconomic background being able to implement their ideas, and the role of the internet in facilitating that? So, thank you.
On the contrary, you know what is nice about Egypt? The poor and the people who are deprived from many things, and the poor, they are the most content. They're never envious. They're not. They don't have a grudge against the rich. It's a very funny situation. Actually, the ones who have a grudge against the rich are the rich. I mean, it's like someone has a grudge against the other one because he's jealous the other one is richer, you know. But the lower social brackets we have are actually not a problem. They have aspirations for a better life. And that is our role as entrepreneurs, that every time you're going to start a small business and employ 3-4 people from their kids that might not have had a chance because they graduate from these Egyptian universities who throw thousands in the working market without real qualifications, and they sit at home with their parents doing nothing. So we could help them. The role of internet is very important, and it's actually the solution in a way, because for the younger generation today also, you have to know that most of the businesses now are still the classical, dominated by old families who have been started that 20, 30, 40 years ago. And actually, chief executives and chairmen of companies in Kuwait or Saudi Arabia, and so the old generation are internet illiterate. Okay, so that presents an opportunity for first the second generation, your generation, and for the poor. Because now everybody has a mobile phone, even the poor, because penetration rates of mobile phones are now 120 and 130%. So once you have your phone, you're on the internet, you're on Facebook, you start to be lured into the internet world. And it provides a lot of ideas and a lot of possibility of job and creativity and so on. So personally, in my investment and my personal investments, a third of my investments are in the internet era. Because I believe the internet it's become the future. It's become a dominating element. I mean, think of yourself when you go for dinner now. You don't talk to each other. Everybody's on his phone tweeting,
So my name is Yusuf Darwish. I'm an Egyptian student studying at London School of Economics, and I'm admitted to London Business School Masters in Management. And my question is slightly personal, but the reason that I look up to you as like a role model, not just because you're a very successful businessman, but also like a nationalist, well-respected man. So my question, like, how do you manage this trade-off? Because I personally have this thing that I love my country a lot, but I always think that there might be some trade-off when you think about doing good to people. So I'm fascinated, like, how you're always there, like, for Egypt, and you're doing good to people, but still you're a very successful businessman. Do you have like difficult decisions that you take? Like, how do you manage this trade-off? Thank you.
First of all, I don't punish the people for the mischiefs of the rulers or of the system or of the bureaucracy or of the political situation. The people most people actually are not interested in politics. They are victims of politics, And that's why also when you have people elected into our parliaments, they're usually the ones who can do good marketing or can buy votes and so on, because the majority of people are inactive when it comes to exercising that and so on. So first of all, I love my people because you're Egyptian, when the Egyptians are, with all respect, okay, so first they're the funniest, they have the best sense of humor. And secondly, they are kind. They are not aggressive by nature. Okay, you don't want to get them on their bad side, but in usual, a smile will get you through anywhere in Egypt, even if it says no entry, or even in a military base or whatever. Just smile at the guy. So they're really good-hearted, and they have also other good qualities. They stand by each other. Friends, so if you have an Egyptian friend, then you know that very well. He's your best friend. He's always going to be there for you, wherever the situation is and so on. So what I try to do is, first of all, I try to do good because I think people expect that from me. And because God, and I have a very simple formula, God has been so gracious to me, so I have to be gracious to people to repay God. It's like, it's like paying him back, so it helps me. And the fourth is my faith. So I might not go to church and do all the rituals, but I have a very strong faith in God, and he gives me a lot of power, and I think this power has been planned by him for the good of the people, not just for my own good. So I do that,
Nicholas Kahale, I'm from Lebanon, so thanks for the compliment you made us earlier. Two questions, actually. One, if you had to project in the next 3 years, would you say you're optimistic with Trump and Russia and Putin working together in the Middle East in terms of geopolitical advance and progress, or are you're more pessimistic? That's the first question. And the second question, more about Egypt. Obviously, when I went to Egypt first time 20 years ago, it was 75 million, and now I think it's over 90. Do you feel that growth, while it's always good to have demographic growth or growth of population, but do you feel that's a little bit extreme, and something like what the Chinese did, maybe that's extreme, would do good for Egypt for the next 20 years, while until sort of the economy grows and then can absorb all this new labor?
The first problem, I could say I'm optimistic and not optimistic in the same time. Optimistic on the fact that Donald Trump is a businessman, and businessmen don't leave matters fluid like that. They don't leave matters unresolved, you know. So Mr. Obama has been dancing around the bush for 8 years. He's done nothing, and he gets credit for the rise of ISIS. You know, imagine a terrorist group that we've been fighting them for 6 months to regain a city. One city. So the armies of America, Iraq, and Saudi, and all these armies are trying to regain one city from a bunch of terrorist killers. So who is responsible for the fact that they became so powerful? Is because nobody decided to go and face them when they started, you know. And so Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin were going to do very well about not leaving issues like that floating and trying to bring, let's say, stability in the Middle East. Where I'm not optimistic, and that catches to your second question, is, unfortunately, I'm a guy who believes in democracy. And I don't believe in the saying that our countries are not ready for democracy, and look at the Chinese model, it's working very well without democracy, and so on. So I actually don't like China, and I don't like the system. I'm not the Chinese, I mean the system, okay? So I have to be careful. No, I don't like the system in China, because nobody has the right to deprive you of your freedom, and your freedom of speech, your freedom of opinion, your freedom of innovation, and all these regimes which are dogmatic and close up and control people's minds and so on, and think it's only about food and drinking and eating and work, they are definitely not the right model. The right model is here in England, in America, where you have a real democracy, a Congress, a Senate, and a president that can be impeached. You know? So the model of Mr. Putin or China, where you have a strong dictator who holds all the cards in his hand, the parliament, the secret service, and the army, and no democracy, is no model that I can, in good faith, say that I'm willing to adapt that model for the sake of prosperity. I don't see that there is any conflict between democracy and prosperity, and therefore I am less optimistic, because some people believe because Mr. Trump has put fighting terrorism and ISIS and so on, that he is going to put the democracy on the back shelf, and therefore he will be a good partner with Mr. Putin. If that is the case, it's going to be a disaster, because really we don't deserve in the Arab world, we don't, why are we perceived that we are not, let's say, worthy of having a real democratic system? And where do you go when you shut voices and opinions and you just listen to security or people who control people? It's always, it's clear, it has failed. It failed in Egypt after 30 years of the Mubarak regime, and it will fail anywhere where this persists, you know.
Hello, my name is Muhammad. I'm originally from Egypt. So I want to ask about something. Let's see, Egypt, as you said, and as we all know, is flooded with corruption, with bureaucracy. But let's say I want to go back to Egypt to start like any investment or any startup. And as you, Mr. Sawiris, and all Sawiris families, you are very successful. They're ultra successful actually in Egypt. So how do you deal with corruption in Egypt? Like if I want to be successful in Egypt and I am faced with corruption, but I want to follow your path. So can you tell us, please, how do you deal with the gray area in Egypt?
Well, me, I'm an extremely persistent person, which means, what does the corruptor do? Well, I'll give you an example, is the best, because then you can see. So the building we have in Egypt is Nile City Towers. These two buildings are exceptional buildings. So when I submitted for the license had to be approved by the Prime Minister, because it's an exception, it has an exception in the height. So we went, and it was a mega project, and Egypt at that time was looking for investment, so the Prime Minister was very enthusiastic, and he signed the approval of this license and so on. Then it trickled down to Mr. Bureaucracy or Mr. Corrupt. So this guy calls my guy and says, your Mr. Sawiris thinks he's well wired, he gets the signature of the Prime Minister and thinks he has the permit. either he brings, it's a true story, huh? Either I get 500,000 pounds at that time, that was the rate. Today he will ask for 5 million maybe. 500,000 pounds, or he will never see this license, and he can call me a loser if he gets this. I'm using another word than the one he used. If he gets this license. So my guy tells him, look, I know Mr. Sawiris. Mr. Sawiris is not a guy, he has one principle in life, and that is nobody can bend his arm. And what you're doing is unbending. He's never going to accept that. So my advice to you is just do your work and so on. And if later on you need a favor from him, you need to hire someone, you need to help you do some good, he'll help. But if I go and tell him that, he'll tell you go and fly a kite and you won't see a penny. He told him, just go and tell him what I said like I said it. So my guy was not so brilliant. He comes to me and tells me, it's like that, 500,000 or no towers. Okay. So how does he do that? He starts asking for documents that are really not required by law and that will take you ages to take. So what do? It takes me months and months, and I get all the documents and I shoot it back at him. Then he comes up with another trick and a third trick and the fourth trick. After 2 years, he has exhausted his tricks, and I went to the governor of the Cairo to tell him, about that and that. So on the day I'm going to the government to see the governor, he told someone to make a court case, to send a legal notice to me that this land is mine. So someone sent me a legal notice that this is his land, while I have the registered contract and everything. So I wrote to the governor told me, but someone just made a court case saying it's his land. I told him, what about if everybody in Egypt sends everybody in Egypt a letter like that? Then we can build anything. Why did they make these contracts which are Shar al-Aqari and registered and so on? I am the owner. Now listen, you have a thief down there, you either give me my license today or I have to go and give him 500,000 bribes that he asked now. Now, you have a legal consultant, get him in the room now and ask him if my papers are all conform or not. So he did that. He called the legal guy, and the legal guy told him, all documents are correct. Mr. Sawiris should get his permit, So he told him, and why isn't he getting his permit? He stayed quiet, of course. I'm going to tell him the guy there takes a bribe. So the governor, because he was weak, is not undecided. So I told the governor, listen, I have a proposal for you. I told him, listen, I'll give you £5 million donation for the poor housing, because he has a program of poor social housing, if you give me the license today. And it's my right to get it without that. And you should take that as a proof that I don't want to pay the bribe to the guy there. It's cheaper for me to go and give him 500,000 than to give you the 5 million. He said, you really give me the 5 million? I said, yes, now. I'll bring my checkbook, I'll sign the check now, you give me the license now. He gave me the license, I signed the check, I gave him the check, and I got the license in the end. But I lost 2 years, and 2 years of revenue, and the cost of building went higher and everything, But what is the motto of the story is, where there is a will, there is a way. It just depends if you really love Egypt that much that you're willing to go that hassle, or you wait here and go to. Also in England, it's bureaucratic for a building, but there is rules, and if you supply the right documents, you follow the rules, you'll get the permit here, and nobody will ask you for a 500,000 bribe. Yeah.
One last question. Hi, my name is Omar, and I'm coming from MBA program at HEC Paris. Until December, I was helping your competitor, El Suwaidi Electric, in Beni Suef mega project, the power plant. And by the time we're speaking now, more and more power plants are coming online in Egypt. We are talking about 50% added power to the Egyptian line network.
Over power.
Yeah. Well,
we don't need all this. Yeah.
Right. So what's next? Who's going to consume this power? What's happening in Egypt?
Ask the ones who build this power. It's like we build power for the whole Middle East, So I think they think they're going to export power. But you can, actually, you can. But it's
Don't you think that the government has something in mind as an industrial revolution? I'm just trying to find a solution.
No. Now we're going to science fiction. I wish they would. It's like I wish they would. I wish really they would do what you say, to be disruptive, to gather all the young people here and say, and have a program like the program in Lebanon they had with the 400 million injection. It made a revolution, you know. Did you think anybody will go in Egypt and say, we're going to throw $400 million into the ways of our young entrepreneurs to... They don't do that. They don't. There's no thinking out of the box, you know. And really, also, you have a lot of. I can't be very open about it, but there's a lot of interferences, which you know. I mean, like interferences. Even our regulators are not fully free, you know. And there's a lot of interferences, you know. So I don't know. It's like all this. They will build these powers, and then maybe in 3 weeks also another nuclear plant that is coming. So there is no revolution wala haga. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. That's actually the main problem we have. Is education. And education is unfortunately not something that the private sector, like I personally, I am a supporter of 3 private universities. So the French University, Nile University, which is a research university, and now I became a member of the board of trustees of the American University. So I believe that education would solve all these problems we thought about, because if everybody is educated, they will stop doing these stupid things, they will know how life is, and bureaucracy will disappear and so on. But the problem is, again, we have to think out of the box, we have to be disruptive. We can't have the same educational system that has emerged with this low quality graduates that we have, and that would require also someone to come in. And there is one experience that I've seen lately, because I'm engaged also on that, and that is that when the president visited Japan, he was very much impressed by their education system, and so they decided to start 100 schools with the Japanese model, and the good news, away from the control of the Ministry of Education. And that's really the only way there is hope in these 100 schools. I mean, if I wanted to be fair and say, why was I successful? One of the main reasons is my school. I went to a German school in Cairo, and it was equally German as in Germany. So I ended up with an education like a German born in Germany. Okay, so that has been a massive base of my so I agree with you always, but unfortunately, whenever you need the help of governments or administration, that's where you come to the stop sign. You know, so I'm someone that always in my life I always tell governments, you want to do us a favor? The biggest thing you can do for us is to do nothing and go away from the way. If you go away and just leave us do the work, you did us the biggest favor. Is once they come in with some interferences, other people interfere, and things go wrong again. Thank you. Thank you.